This is macOS Ken.
Negative note of neutrality on Apple. Apple's people person punches out. And promising news for Bad Monkey. It is Thursday, the 17th of October, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from macOS Ken. Brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSCan. What the heck? Over the past couple of days, we've heard sentiment from JP Morgan analyst Samik Chatterjee and Morgan Stanley analyst Eric Woodring indicating that apparent weakness upon the release of the iPhone 16 line should be discounted. Chatterjee referred to the apparent early weakness as an aberration, while both Chatterjee and Woodring saw lead times for iPhone last week that were not getting shorter. Apparently unimpressed is UBS analyst David Vogt. The Fly ran a blurb on a note he wrote Wednesday, and I gotta say I find it frustrating. Vogt points out that wait times for iPhone 16 Pro in the US and China currently stand at 18 and 17 days respectively. That is lower than waits for iPhone 15 Pro this time last year, which stood at 20 days in the US and 21 in China. Not pointed out the fact that Apple was having issues with the production of tetraprism lenses for the iPhone 15 Pro Max last year, lengthening waits for that device. Frustrating. Additionally, the piece has Vogt expecting iPhone sales to be up 4% for the recently ended September quarter and 1% for the in-progress December quarter. Growth sure, but he and his see limited opportunity for iPhone upside in either quarter. Okay, that one's less frustrating. I mean, a number of analysts think the staggered rollout for Apple Intelligence will mean a gradually growing number of iPhone upgrades. A stronger for longer iPhone upgrade cycle is how Evercore analyst Amit Daryanani put it earlier this week. Hard to know whether that's going to happen, though, without Apple Intelligence actually running for many consumers. The thing about the wait times is frustrating, though. Mr. Vogt has a neutral rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $236. I found the story on the Vogt note while trying to figure out why Apple shares dropped on Wednesday. As is almost always the case, it was probably more than just one thing. The UBS neutrality on iPhone may have been one contributing factor, while worries from the guy covering Apple for Jefferies may have been another. Seeking Alpha had Jefferies analyst Edison Lee worrying about something that may happen sometime between 3 years from now and never. Here's the concern. The case brought against Google by the U.S. Department of Justice saw a court rule that Google is a monopoly. A piece from NPR says proposed sanctions or remedies include possibly putting an end to exclusive agreements Google has with companies like Samsung and Apple. The one with Apple refers to the money Google pays to be the default search engine on iPhone, and that has Mr. Lee freaked. This thing that may or may not happen. If the DOJ ultimately prevails after a series of appeals, Seeking Alpha has Lee indicating that Apple could lose a significant chunk of valuable revenue. According to the analyst, his team's antitrust expert thinks it could take 3 to 8 years to settle this issue, which means Apple could lose the money Google's paying sometime between 2028 and 2032, assuming the deal gets nixed, which it may not, and assuming that Google doesn't win on appeal, which it might. But, why wait? Bad as that may sound, the piece has Lee indicating that sales of iPhone 16 and the rollout of Apple Intelligence are seen as more important in the near term, given that the iPhone accounts for roughly half of Apple's annual revenue. Of course, his previous note had the analyst arguing that it's too soon for AI-enabled smartphones to really make a dent. He's not looking for those to take off until the 2026 2027 smartphone season. Mr. Lee has a hold rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $212.92, a number I promise I did not make up. If you can figure out what's happening with Apple betas, good on you. Earlier this week, Apple released new developer betas of iOS and iPadOS 18.1. Headed into the first release of Apple Intelligence, one would have expected those to be accompanied by a new beta of macOS Sequoia 15.1, and yet it took about a day for that to turn up. Now a piece from Mac Rumors says Apple has seeded a new public beta of macOS Sequoia 15.1 to the testing crew, and guess what? No new public betas of iOS and iPadOS 18.1. Public testers can grab the new macOS beta now. People who wish they were that cool can find out how to be at beta.apple.com. And as I say, if you can figure out what's happening with Apple betas, good on you. While Apple enthusiasts wait for iOS 18.1 and its ilk, news of a new feature for iOS 18.2 and another coming in 2025. 9to5Mac says the Cupertino company teased features for business on Wednesday. Referred to in the piece as an extension of the Apple Business Connect program, the report says the company previewed enhanced caller ID for businesses and brand logos in Mail. On the first one, the piece says Business Caller ID will help iPhone users avoid spam calls and speak to businesses with confidence of their legitimacy. When it's launched, verified calls from businesses will be indicated directly on the iPhone lock screen, with the call info featuring their corresponding company name, logo, and department label. That one's coming in 2025. As for logos in Mail, the piece says the new branded mail feature means iPhone users will see email from businesses annotated with a distinctive company logo and brand name in the Mail app. Businesses can sign up to participate today, and the functionality will roll out later this year as part of iOS 18.2. Apple's chief people officer has apparently had enough of Apple people. Less than 2 years after taking the job, a piece from Bloomberg says the company's people person is leaving the company. According to the report, Carol Surface, who started at Apple in early 2023 and reports to CEO Tim Cook, is departing. Bloomberg says the Chief People Officer title was created for Surface, who was tasked with overseeing human resources, inclusion, diversity, and recruiting for Apple's roughly 160,000 employees. She took the people part of her gig from Deirdre O'Brien, who had been managing the team in addition to the company's retail stores. With Surface's departure, Bloomberg says the job of being Apple's people person now goes back to O'Brien. News of a data center 7 years in the making. Apple Insider says a $1.3 billion center announced in 2017 for Waukee, Iowa, has finally opened. Partially. Apple CEO Tim Cook actually gave a speech about the center when it was announced, with work beginning on the site 5 years later. In fairness, the world was knee-deep in a pandemic for 2 or 3 of those years. Now the piece says Apple's Waukee 1 data center building is operational. It serves North American users with iMessage, Apple Music, iCloud, and the App Store. Plans for the site called for anywhere from 1 to 6 more data centers to be built. So far, the first center is the only one approved. And finally today, did I tell you that I was watching the Vince Vaughn series Bad Monkey on Apple TV+? Well, I was, and I did, and it was great. Not for the kids, to be sure, but I will say there was just something truly wonderful about it. It has been so much in my head. I'm actually thinking of watching it again, like in the next couple of weeks, and getting the special lady friend to join me this time. Maybe it was the writing, maybe it was the cast, which included Rob Delaney, John Ortiz, Zach Braff, Michelle Monaghan, and really so many other fantastic performers. I don't know, I shouldn't be surprised. It was produced by Bill Lawrence, known for such hits as Spin City, Scrubs, Cougar Town, Shrinking, and of course, Ted Lasso. Not everything he's done has been amazing, but he's got a good average. And he has plans for at least 2 more seasons of Bad Monkey. 9 to 5 Mac highlights an interview between Lawrence and The Hollywood Reporter that has Lawrence saying, "When I pitched it to Apple, I had a beginning, middle, and end of a 3-season arc for the main character, Andrew Yancey, and for who he would be and where he would get to, and they were really receptive to it." To hear 3-season arc from the Ted Lasso creator isn't surprising. I mean, Ted Lasso. It is interesting, though. While Lawrence sees 3 seasons for Bad Monkey, there are only 2 books on which to base Yancey's adventures. Quoting Lawrence again, Bad Monkey author Carl Hyacin very seldom wrote sequels to his novels, yet he wrote a sequel to this one called Razor Girl that we have. Carl always tells me, with his main characters, he's a big believer in 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but he really wanted to write a second book so that you could see Yancey on a journey to becoming a guy that doesn't get in his own way when it comes to happiness. So, 2 books, 3 seasons. How are they going to go forward? Splitting the second book into 2 seasons is one possibility. Writing something new for a 3rd season could also happen. Of course, all of that is very theoretical right now. While Lawrence says Apple was really receptive to the 3-season idea, the Cupertino streamer has yet to greenlight a 2nd season. macOS Can, brought to you by me, and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSCan. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macoscan.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.